I'm just admitting people, Parveen, because I've got
Thank you.
hosting it.
Yeah. I am just setting up the online. And we are all set. Yeah. Okay. So thank you everybody for joining us today. As you know that we are going to talk about predatory publications and open access and predatory publishers around that particular topic. And this will be by Professor Roger Watson, who doesn't need any introduction at all. Before that, if somebody doesn't know me in this group, my name is Parveen. I work at the University of Sheffield and Doncaster and Bassett Law Teaching Hospitals as Professor of Nursing and Gender-Based Violence. And this series of workshop, this is our second webinar workshop for the FIMO Research Committee. Professor Roger Watson has kindly agreed to do it. And just to give you a little bit introduction to Roger, which, as I say, I don't think he needs an introduction, but he's currently working as an academic dean at Southwest Medical University, China. And he's also Professor of Nursing at St. Francis University, Hong Kong. And we know that he's an editor-in-chief of Nursing Education in Practice and an editorial board member for Wiki Journal of Medicine. He has been a Sigma member since 2017 when he was, and then he was awarded International Nurse Researcher Hall of Fame. He was also awarded Doctor of Honoris Causa by Maribor University in 2020 and was the 2022 winner of the Margaret Comfort Freda Award for Leadership and Editorial Leadership in Nursing Publications by International Academy of Nursing Editors. So thank you so much, Roger, for doing this session for us. I think predatory publication related issues never gets out of importance, and there are always new issues that we need to understand around that. So we are really looking forward to listening from you around this topic. And to just tell you the group that this session is recorded and live broadcasted on YouTube so that we could then share it with other colleagues who may be interested in this. And I hope that is okay with you. Thank you, and over to you, Roger.
Thanks very much. I hope everyone can hear me. I'm just going to change my spectacles so I can see the writing on the screen. Start to share the screen, and then make it. No, is that? Oh, that's gone the wrong way. Okay, can you see that as one screen? Yeah, okay, that's good. First of all, I think I've been in Sigma a great deal longer than since 2017. That may have been when the English chapter was set up. I think I've been in Sigma for about 20 or 25 years, but never mind. That just shows my age rather than anything else. Good to see you all. I saw familiar faces popping up there. And I'm going to talk today for, well, I think the session's about an hour, Parveen, but I'll try and talk a little bit less than that about detecting and avoiding predatory publishers. And I look forward to any questions or discussion afterwards. And this is something I've been really interested in for a very long time. Now, let's see if my automatic slide changer is going to work. Pop. No, it didn't. It never does the first time. No, it's not working. Oh, there it goes. Okay. I'm going to have to pop that back again. There we go. Right. So what I want to talk about really is open access and unethical journals. I think the problem is something's popping up. Yeah, I'll just use my mouse instead of that bit of technology. So what I want to talk about first of all is the rise of the open access movement and the rise of predatory publishers, which have sort of grown up on the back of the open access movement. That's not the only thing that's led to the predatory publisher movement. And I think I'll mention at the end, might come to ChatGPT at the end, talk about publishing ethically. And that's what I'm going to cover today. Right, so how it all started, well, academic publishing started a long time ago, but how the present sort of issues, problems, if you like, arose because of the World Wide Web, which has been with us for quite a while now, maybe about 30, maybe 40 years. And on the back of that, of course, the internet and then the World Wide Web, whereby information could be shared very quickly, and the publishing industry moved very rapidly towards online publishing. It took a while to get into this, but for the last 20 years at least, most journals are published solely online. And so we've moved from print to online, and I can't think of any major journals that are available in hard copy these days. Even the society journals, like Journal of Nursing Scholarship and so forth, and Parvine's journal, International Nursing Review, I think eventually will stop producing any hard copy for members at all. All the societies I'm a member of send me their journals online these days. So the move from print to online has been one significant move within the publishing industry, but it's certainly helped to give rise to the predatory publishing movement. So we now hardly ever read hard copy. We read most things on a screen as PDFs or as HTML versions of articles. And this, as I say, along with other developments, has given rise to the rise of the predatory publishers, because they can exploit that medium very, very easily. The other driver for this, apart from the publish or perish sort of mentality that's pretty prevalent in academia, has been the rise of the open access movement. And this is rather out of date, but this is between 93 and 2009. I mean, if we extended this up to the present day, we'd find that the number of open access journals and the number of open access articles would have increased a great deal. This only goes up to 2009, but you can see then that there were something like 5,000 open access journals. And the Directory of Open Access Journals now says that the number of open access journals is over 12,500 peer-reviewed open access journals. So the number of open access journals is just enormous. And the number of articles, of course, you multiply that by several orders of magnitude to bring it up to the number of open access articles that are available now. Now, open access is not a bad thing. It's become very controversial again in the UK. I see over proposals to expand open access for the forthcoming REF. But open access has been one of the drivers that's led to the open access predatory publishing movement, because again, it's something else that they can exploit along with the internet and our publisher perish mentality, our desire to get articles out almost at any cost. So I've written several things about on this. The links are all available in the PowerPoints. I can send the PowerPoints to Parveen. I can share them with people if you want to read my articles. I published in a German magazine, which is published in English, Compliance Alliance Journal. It's a legal journal. I published there about evolving trends in open access. So I've been writing about this for quite a while. That came out about 2018 or 2019. And also, I've been writing in something called Research Outreach. And again, the links are all there. There's a live link under my picture there, rather out of date. I'm not really at the University of Hull anymore. But there's various articles that you can pick up, some of the things I'm going to say here, but also to fill in some of the gaps. This particular article is about Paywall, the movie, which is about the business of Paywall, the business of scholarship. And it's really about the rise of open access and the resistance, initially at least, of the mainstream publishers. And it's the movie is well worth watching. It's available on YouTube to watch. It's quite controversial, and I've done a review of it there as well. And it looks at some of the good aspects of open access. It looks at some of the bad aspects. And again, as I say, it looks at how the mainstream publishers, principally Wiley and Elsevier, have responded to it. So open access, comparing the different models, first of all. there are various models. There's the sort of traditional model whereby on the left you've got the author in orange, and on the right you've got the reader in orange, and you've got an intermediary, a publisher, who publishes an article that goes out to the reader. Another model is one which looks similar, but the difference between the two models is where the money changes hands. The model on the top is one called pay to view, whereby the reader needs to pay to view the article, or more commonly, the institution, a hospital or a university, pays to let you view the articles. Very few of us actually pay for that. But we're moving more towards the middle, the second model there, whereby people are increasingly paying publishers to publish articles, open access being the operative word there. They shouldn't be paying them to publish. And again, it's this aspect of the open access movement that the predatory publishers have been able to exploit, getting in there and taking people's money under the pretense often of publishing open access. And there are various things can happen once you part with your money, but that's been one of the drivers. And there's also other ways of publishing. There are repository ways of publishing where institutions pay for it, but that's just in there for completeness. I think the point I would make as an editor working with, at least, I don't work for Elsevier, but working with a major publishing company, is that it doesn't matter what sort of model of publishing you have. Money has to change hands somewhere. Somebody has to fund it somehow. And of course, articles which are published by either of the other routes above, whether it's pay to publish or open access, can be put in repositories after a particular embargo period has been passed. So there are various models of open access. On the left-hand side there, with what's supposed to be a brick wall or a paywall, that's the traditional model where everything's locked away and you pay to view it. We've moved pretty rapidly in the last 15 years or so towards open access, being driven by funders and by charities, by the general public who want to see what's happening to their money and have access to the research that they're actually funding. So we've seen the open access movement growing, and there are various models here. At the bottom, the model that we showed you, or I showed you in the bottom of the previous slide, is the green open access model, whereby an institution pays to make the final accepted copies available to view. And then in the middle there, the one that the publishers, of course, favour is the gold open access, which gives you immediate open access, whereby the author or the institution or the research grant or whatever pays the publisher to make the article available open access. And then at the top is the platinum open access, immediate open access without the APC, means the article processing charge, essentially without paying. There aren't many of these. Some societies offer platinum open access publishing, some societies like the Royal College of Physicians in Edinburgh, for example. And also, as Parveen said in my introduction, I work with the Wiki Journal of Medicine, and that's a platinum open access platform whereby you don't have to pay to publish and you don't have to pay to view. But of course, money has to come from somewhere, and it comes from the Wikimedia Foundation to fund the work that we do there. So there are various models, but it's the gold open access model, of course, the one where you pay to publish. That's the one that attracts the predatory publishers, because they get in there and fool you or trick you into parting with your money in order to get published. So first of all, as I say, open access publishing took a while to catch on. I think there was a point at which people were very suspicious about open access publication. It had a reputation for poor quality, for unsustainable journals, often published by very small organizations and universities. And it took a while to gather momentum, as it were, but now it's very much mainstream and being driven, as I say, by funding bodies in the UK in particular, but across Europe, of course, by the open science projects that have taken place there, which major publishers, to be fair, Wiley initially and then Elsevier, have actually embraced and been working with. So the considerations that you would need to make as an individual in choosing to publish open access are obviously the cost. The cost can be quite expensive. You're looking at, it's usually done in dollars, $2,500 to $3,000 is quite a common amount to pay for an article. Very few individuals can afford that, and I wouldn't ever encourage anybody to pay that. If you want to publish in Nature, I doubt very many of us will be doing that, but if you do, it will cost you a grand sum of 9,000 US dollars, and you've no choice because they have gone completely open access. But of course, it's such a famous journal that people want to get in there. So cost is one consideration. And again, the predatory publishers get in here because they offer publication at very, very low cost. Seems attractive to some people. Of course, sustainability. Will that website be there in a few years' time? Will your article still be available? And of course, what I'm pointing towards here is going with the major publishers or the major groups, which will ensure that your paper is still available. And of course, reputation. But reputation of journals isn't just based on their open access requirements, it's often based on other things like impact factors and so forth. And we're seeing a lot many more purely open access journals entering, first of all, the Emerging Science Citation Index and eventually getting onto the Clarivate impact factor journal list. And I had experience of setting up an open access journal, Nursing Open, with Wiley, and taking it through in 5 years, which is the minimum time to being able to get it onto the Clarivate list with an impact factor. So I've been through that process. But all the time, we're very aware of the predatory publishers getting involved in there, taking away our business, but more importantly, rather than business, ruining people's reputations, taking people's money from them for no good reason. Now, the Directory of Open Access Journals is a good place. I'll come back at the end to looking at ways to avoid predatory publishers. But if you're in any doubt about an open access journal, look at the Directory of Open Access Journals. If it's listed there, it gives you its provenance, gives you the cost of the open access publication, tells you how long it's been on there. And if they're on there, they should be reputable journals. And just as a matter of interest, in the middle there, I show you Nursing Open as it was a few years ago. The cost there was $1,650 US for the article processing charge. I think it's gone up since I produced this. It shows you when it was added. It shows you the ISSN, gives you the website, and tells you that it's a double-blind peer-reviewed journal. So if you're in any doubts about a journal, if you can find it on here, you should be safe to submit to it. You can also have a look at journal citation reports on Clarivate and the Web of Science. Look at the list of emerging sources citation index journals. They're not quite on the list, but they've been deemed suitable for inclusion, so they've passed certain criteria, certain quality criteria. PubMed, of course, and platforms like Scopus. Although, having said that, according to Retraction Watch recently, Scopus has been fooled in to including a few predatory journals. They are absolutely incorrigible in trying to get onto these things. So there's no 100% guarantee that any website will be free of predatory journals, but these are the ones that at least make an effort not to include them. And of course, CINAHL as well. Right, so that's sort of, don't know why that happened. That's a sort of background to very quickly the development of online publishing, which is, again, a major driver within the publication industry, and of course is a major driver for the predatory publishers. It means they don't have to produce anything. It's just electronic. And I've looked at the rise of the open access movement. Without judging it, it's got some very good aspects to it. I'm very much in favor of it, but it has created opportunity for the predators. And if anybody doesn't know what this picture means, it's from the film Predator. So if you want to know about predatory publishers, of course, you can have a read of some of the things I've been writing. I'm going to show you one or two more pieces. But of course, here's the man who really opened it up to everyone's attention, Jeffrey Beall. And there's an excellent article, which I don't have a link to there, but it's open access anyway, Research Integrity Corner from, it's an Elsevier journal. Sorry, I can't see which one it is, but anyway, what I learned from predatory publishers, put that into Google and you'll find this article. This was when Geoffrey Beale was employed as a librarian. He's no longer employed. The predatory publishers, some of them went after him, and he eventually lost his job as a result of this, or at least was glad to get out of it, I think. But he's done a fantastic piece of work in putting together Geoffrey Beale's list of predatory open access journals, and it's still available cached on the internet. It's the only free resource really that you can still look at, but it hasn't been updated for a number of years. But what's more important really is about the characteristics of these journals. From Wikipedia, perfect definition. I'm a great fan of Wikipedia. Predatory publishing, also write-only publishing or deceptive publishing, is an exploitative academic business model that involves charging publications fees to authors without checking articles for quality and legitimacy, and without providing any sort of the normal publishing services that you would expect. It says whether open access or not, but I can't think of any of them that are not open access. It can be much worse than that. I mean, it can also involve taking your money and doing absolutely nothing as a result of that, just taking your money. And what you mustn't forget is that they prefer you to pay using credit cards. So if you do pay, and I know people have done this, then they have your credit card details, and you risk having your bank account emptied. So this is data. Again, it's slightly out of date, but it shows a few interesting trends here. This is taken directly from Beale's academic list, and it's put graphically in the Times Higher with a shark's tail to emphasize the predatory nature of the journals. But what you can see is the rise over the years, a very short time, up from 0 up to 1,000 predatory publishers, and almost the same number of predatory journals at that time, although that pattern's changed slightly because most of these predatory publishers have a raft of journals associated with them. And then, very importantly, down on the bottom right, and these were only becoming apparent when Geoffrey stopped gathering data, when he had to stop gathering data, are the hijacked journals. And if you're not sure what a hijacked journal is, of course they're predatory, but these are journals which use websites which look almost identical. In fact, to all intents and purposes, are identical to regular journal websites. They may use exactly the same name. I saw one once for the Journal of Advanced Nursing. It disappeared pretty quickly after I got in touch with them, but it looks exactly the same. You can be fooled into submitting an article there. The key difference is that somewhere along that line they ask you for money, not to be open access. They ask you for money before they publish your article, and usually it's after your article has been accepted. So the pressure is on, particularly on inexperienced academics who maybe do not understand what's happening, to pay that money to get the article published. That should never happen, of course. If you're asked for money, it will only be for open access, and it will be done in a very, very different way. It's a completely separate process. But the hijacked journals, they do lure people in, and I know people who've parted with money inadvertently. Difficult sometimes you can't spot it usually from the web page, but if you check the URLs, they usually don't look right. If you're in any doubt about hijacked journals, then try and contact anybody that you know at the journal, the bona fide journal, or get a colleague to come and check it with you. So how many predatory journals are there now? Well, there's a blog called Predatory Publishing. It's reckoned now that, this is from, I think, last year, there are over 15,000 predatory journals out there now. I mean, the number has grown exponentially since Geoffrey Beale was gathering his data. So they're everywhere. And those of you who are experienced academics, those of you who've published anything at all, will be only too well aware of that. And I'll go through that when I come on to the characteristics of the predatory publishers. So predatory publishers, another piece by myself. Again, you can link if you get the PowerPoints or the PDF of the PowerPoints. Predatory publishers, what are they? Well, the characteristics of predatory publishers, taken from partly from my article and from a few other places, are that they accept articles quickly with little or no peer review or quality control, and they include hoax and nonsensical papers. So there have been people who've, for a laugh, put in papers that are complete nonsense, and of course, inevitably, they get accepted. They're not concerned at all about scientific standards. They're only concerned about accepting and getting your money. So it's a little bit blurry, but of course, credible journals put several hurdles in the way that you'll be only too well aware of. Submission requirements, peer review, editorial requirements, production requirements on the way before you get your paper accepted. And of course, it sometimes isn't accepted. Sometimes you fall at some of these hurdles. Predatory journals, on the other hand, are basically opening the way up and giving you the red carpets, and that's one of their tactics, and that's something that, of course, endears them to sometimes to inexperienced researchers who are keen to get their work published or under pressure to get their work published. Another thing is notifying you about the article fees only after papers are published. When you're submitting, for example, to the Elsevier editorial manager system, you are asked along the way of the submission process about the possibility of open access. So you're told in advance what that might cost if you want to go open access, and you're not obliged to do it or under any pressure to do it. But you know upfront what that's likely to be. And if you do indicate that you're going to go open access, nothing happens at that point until the paper is accepted. But these people only tell you after the paper is accepted. And of course, as I say, with inexperienced researchers and perhaps experienced researchers too, the pressure is on. You don't want to withdraw the article. You want to get it published. They aggressively campaign, and this is the thing that many of you I'm speaking to here will be well aware of, is opening your emails in the morning and being bombarded with emails from predatory publishers. And it's very difficult to stop this. They don't just ask you about submitting articles, they ask you about serving in editorial boards and all sorts of things. And it's exactly the same industry involved in these predatory conferences, where you can turn up having paid a huge amount of money, including your own airfare and your own hotel fare, and a hefty fee to the company to find that there's nobody else there. But they aggressively campaign, and they are, again, incorrigible is the only word. They're almost impossible to stop. It's very difficult to spam them out. Gmail is quite good, and I mostly use Gmail these days. Gmail is quite good at sending this kind of stuff to spam. I don't know how Google's managed to get in there. I find I'm still on University of Hull email system. It's absolutely hopeless on Outlook, and I every time I open that up, my heart sinks. I still get loads and loads of invitations to submit to predatory journals and predatory conferences. On Gmail, not so much, but they do find you eventually. They're very intrepid like that. So you'll be aware of that, I'm sure. They also list as members of editorial boards people who have no idea they're on that editorial board, and it's very difficult for you to resign, because the difficulty with these publishers is that there's really nobody to contact. The addresses and the emails and such like they're false, and they're often using AI and bots. They're way ahead of the game on that. So when you respond to them, they respond to you in a very strange way, and it's usually just a bot that's getting back to you. So it's very difficult to do anything about it. I have experience of not of finding myself as a scientific or editorial board member, but of finding myself as a scientific advisor to a conference once, which I knew nothing about and had nothing to do with. Luckily, I was able to get off that, but it can be very difficult. So, those of you to whom I'm speaking, some of you very eminent people, you may well be an editorial board member of a predatory journal without knowing it. And they appoint fake academics, so they make things up. So it's always well worth checking. They're not particularly clever. They very often have lots of people from the same country, or people who appear to come from the same country. And of course, you maybe want to check their credentials, and you find some of them exist, and they may not know they're there. Other ones don't exist at all. They just completely make people up. There's almost nothing they won't do. And of course, I've talked about this one already. This is the hijack journals. They mimic the name or website style of more established journals. In other words, they're proverbial sheep in wolf's clothing. They also make misleading claims about the publishing operation, usually about where it is. It's almost inevitable that it will be in Washington, D.C. Usually it's a post restaurant or nothing at all. Just the address doesn't exist. People have tried to look for them, so they try to, as my kids would say, big themselves up by claiming they're in some important city. And of course, they must be good because of this, but they're just making this stuff up. They are proudly proclaim that they have an ISSN, but anybody can get an ISSN. It doesn't really, one thing, it doesn't really mean anything, and two, they apply it to the whole website and apply it to every journal, but ISSNs are supposed to be unique to any one journal. Moreover, ISSNs are supposed to distinguish between hard copy and online versions of the same journal. But having an ISSN means virtually nothing. In any case, it's purely a tag to find the journal. And they do fake or non-existent impact factors. And again, they're not very clever because they make these extraordinary claims about impact factors. I was once alerted by a colleague in Saudi Arabia. Well, he proudly told me that he'd published a paper in a nursing journal with an impact factor of 14. And I said, well, at that time, there's only one journal with an impact factor over 3. That's the International Journal of Nursing Studies. I'm afraid you've been done. And he truly had been. And he tried to get his money back, tried to withdraw the paper. No chance of doing that at all. And of course, they do have if they publish it, they do have your copyright. It may be a perfectly good paper, and it will not be possible to publish that anywhere else without committing plagiarism. So they've got you, they've got your money, and they've probably got your credit card or your bank account details as well, which should be worrying. And they boast about being indexed by things like ResearchGate and having ISSNs and DOIs, but as anybody knows, and I've already said, anybody can get an ISSN. DOIs are not anything to do with prestige. They're purely digital object identifiers to track online publications. ResearchGate, which I use a lot, but it doesn't confer any prestige whatsoever. So they're like the man in the picture there, boasting to the young lady to try and make himself seem more attractive than he probably is. And some of them exist, of course, as paper mills for a limited group of people, and usually in specific countries. That's another thing. But anyway, these people are not doing themselves any good or their own reputation any good. Right, so that's a sort of rundown of the characteristics. I'm sure you recognize some of these, if not all of them, but especially the one about being constantly bombarded with requests to participate in their what is essentially a criminal activity. I have written in the Times Higher, along with Professor Mark Hayter, suggesting that it is criminal, and that people academics who knowingly publish in predatory journals should be treated as such. That didn't go down very well. Right, predatory publishers, what happens if you respond? Well, the bottom line here, the old cliche bottom line, is you don't respond. Don't even bother. Some of us have tried from time to time playing along with them, just for the fun of it. You really open yourselves up to bombardment with email then. Seems like fun for a start, but don't fall for it. They think that any response is serious and positive, and again, it's possibly because they're using AI or bots or whatever to respond, or possibly the people are responding don't have a good use of English. Their first language is probably not English. They may not be able to speak English. They may have a set of standard responses to send back to you, and it's very obvious in some of the replies that the use of English is very poor. I used to have a habit of responding to predatory conferences, by saying I would love to attend. My bottom requirements are that you waive my conference fee. I would like a business class flight and a 5-star hotel, and of course my fee will be $1,000 a day. And it never put them off. They'd always get back very positively. Very glad you're interested in our conference. We can offer you a discount on the conference fee. So they try to play you along as well. But again, I'm never sure if I'm dealing with a human being or I'm dealing with a bot. So beware. I mean, this is a real email to a friend from a friend of mine. He says, I'm writing to seek advice for my friend. I think this may be rather like the sexually transmitted diseases clinic. It may be advice he was wanting for himself. But anyway, he was a victim of a hijacked journal. The name of the journal is, and I don't show it because I don't want to be taken to court. He paid $600 as an article processing charge. Later learned it was hijacked. He's emailed the journal requesting to retract the paper and to possibly refund the publication fee. However, until now, he's got no response. And I said, and neither will he ever get a response. He'll never get his money back, and tell him to keep a very close eye on his bank account. So it does happen. And this person was by no means that inexperienced or naive. So consequences of publishing in a predatory journal, again, as I say, don't, but you can jeopardize your reputation. I think that is increasingly becoming the case. I don't know of many universities in the UK that have expressly forbidden staff from publishing in them, but I do know that the University of Ulster did at one point. But across the world, and particularly in China, there's a huge campaign by the government and their Department of Science Department of Education, sorry, to put a stop to this. And academics who are found in China having published in predatory journals are disciplined by their university. Their dean has to speak to them, and I wouldn't really imagine that many of them are in employment after that conversation. It can damage, of course, your career, and of course, sounds like in China, it could probably well end your career. You'll get no citations. Nobody in the right mind cites predatory journals if they can help it. You'll lose money, which as a Scotsman is a very important consideration to me. But but really it's the top two, reputation and career, that are really, really the key considerations as far as I'm concerned. So if you don't know already, obviously I'm sure you understand that they should be avoided, but how can we avoid them? Or for those of us who are more experienced academics listening to this, how can we advise our colleagues to avoid them? And you will, and I'm sure you already have had people popping into your office excited to say they've been invited to submit an article to a special issue or to a journal or to attend a conference, and they've already accepted my paper. They won't wait a minute, stop there, roll back a bit, tell me what the journal is. We can be a great source ourselves of advice to our colleagues. So one thing is not to panic, not to get too worried. It's not that difficult to spot predatory publishers, and it's not that difficult to avoid them. I'm not trying to set up a straw dog here. I'm just saying that some people don't realize and fall for it, but we should all be keeping an eye out for them. So a quick check produced by somebody called Crawford. Has the publisher started dozens of new open access titles all at once? That's usually a key indication, and there are many sites that have done this. And again, they usually publish them all under one ISSN. Do the published titles of very few papers, if any? It's quite common to go to these sites if you're interested enough to check them and look at the journals, and some of them are completely empty. They're just there as, fishing. They're just there like nets trying to catch a few people, and they must catch enough people to make it worth their while existing. Do they send emails asking for manuscript submissions or to serve on editorial boards? Of course, I've covered this already. And again, the watchword here really is not to respond to emails. Most reputable journals will not ask you to submit papers. If they do, it will be under very special circumstances, usually for special issues, and usually then ensuring you that the review processes and so forth will all be as rigorous as for any other paper, and putting you in touch with someone on the editorial board or the editorial team to take you through it. But on the whole, you shouldn't respond to these emails. Do they fail to disclose qualifications of editorial board members or editors? Or in fact, on the other way around, have they included people who don't know they're on it? Or do they just make people up? And finally, which is well, not finally, but next, again, I've addressed this already, but is the publisher's address not verifiable? You can do that very easily these days on Google Maps or on Google World or whatever. Street View, you can find out if these places exist. And again, is there very little evidence of peer review? And I would say that in most cases of predatory journals, there's absolutely no evidence of peer review whatsoever. So if any of these, and certainly all of these, exist, it's got to be avoided at all costs. If you are concerned about a journal, there are things that you can do. You can check things like, as I've already mentioned, I'll run through them again: Medline, PubMed, Clarivate, Emerging Sources, Citation Index, and Scopus. A journal that's included on any of these and other similar websites like the DOAJ should be legitimate. It's not a 100% guarantee, as Scopus have found out recently, but you know, they should be, and that wouldn't be your only check if you were concerned. That would be the first place you would turn to, and of course I've already mentioned the DOAJ. So if you are concerned about a journal, there's an excellent website called Think, Check and Submit. And again, the list, the emails here, sorry, the PowerPoint here has a URL, which you, if you get a copy, you can have a look at it. It's very clear. It just says everything about Think, Check and Submit in a series of very clear cartoons. It's aimed at entry-level academics who really don't know anything about this particular industry, but it is very useful. I'm not going to go through all of it. There's several pages worth on Think, Check, Submit, but there is an algorithm or a checklist that you can actually tick off, which should help you not only to avoid predatory publishers, but also help you to choose the right journal for your particular paper, because that's another thing that people can find very difficult, especially when they're entering this world of academic publishing. So it helps you to identify trusted publishers, both for books and for journals. Predatory publishing isn't just about journals, it's about some books as well. And it gives you a checklist to fill in, and a kind of, not so much a score, but it gives you things that you should be looking out for. And so it's got a checklist. You can download the checklist as a PDF. And it's available in various languages as well. So you can think, is it the right journal for your work? So you can have a look at that. I'm not going to go through every single point here, but you've got to be aware that there's a lot of research being published, and publishers are launched regularly. So you've got to be aware that this is an industry. You know, do you or your colleagues know the journal? And I often think this should be the first port of call after looking for a journal on a list, is just asking someone, do you know this journal? Are you aware of it? You know, have you published in it? Do you know any good papers? And of course, can you easily identify and contact the publisher? Publishers should be very easily identifiable. On the webpage for my journal, my emails there, people can email me directly, or they can go through the helplines and indirectly contact people for help through the publishers. These things are not usually available, or I would say hardly ever available on those sites. There's a lot more on that particular website. I noticed at the beginning, for some reason, I said I was going to mention ChatGPT, and it's not been included here. I don't know how that got in there or how I managed to miss it out, but it's not really. We can talk about ChatGPT if you want. It's not so much concern regarding predatory publishers or not, but it is a big concern to us in the publishing industry at the moment. I finish all my presentations by pointing people towards nurse, author, and editor. It used to be edited by Leslie Nichol. It's now edited by Fiona Timmins at UCD in Dublin. And Nurse, Author, and Editor is the professional journal of the INANE, the International Association of Nursing Editors. And it's free to access, which is good. You can download the papers. It's published quarterly. And again, I've written quite a lot here about all sorts of things, but they've really been on to predatory publishers for a long time. And there's lots of articles in here by various people from various perspectives about predatory publishing, about the nature of it, and again, how to avoid it and the potential pitfalls of actually publishing with them. If you want to check my own research record, my ORCID is there. You can scan that URL if you want to. You can follow me on Twitter. It's personal, not professional, so I'd warn you about that. nepeditoroutlook.com, that's my email at nep. And if you're interested and you use WeChat, you can follow me on WeChat. So that's all I have to say. I'm happy, very happy to take questions. What I've got to do is get out of this now. Stop sharing. Yep. Oh, you've all come back again. Nice to see you. Right. Arvine, over to you.
Thank you, Roger. That's been really useful. And you always learn something new from the discussions around this. So I'll open the floor for questions and comments. So if you could just raise your hand, and then you are able to ask question. And if you have got any issues with the mic, please feel free to use the chat box. Nancy?
Yes, that was a wonderful presentation, Roger. And the question I have is, what about the credibility of more and more nurse authors are using Amazon as a publisher?
Yeah.
How do you feel about that compared to like going with Springer or Sigma, that kind of thing?
Yes, no, that's very true. There's essentially no peer review with Amazon, so you'd have to be very careful there. They look out for things like politically incorrect language and non-inclusive language, that kind of thing. They do run things through various bits of AI, I guess, to check for those things. But no, anybody can publish with Amazon, because I've done it. I published a book of short poems with Amazon. It's no problem at all. It just goes up on Kindle and anybody can get it. So it wouldn't be an advisable way to get things out. On the other hand, using Amazon to promote books and to sell books, that's a different matter. But using Amazon just as a publishing platform, no, I would strongly, they're not predatory. I mean, that's for sure. They do what they say on the tin. But again, there's no filtering of the material that's going up on there at all, apart from for certain criteria. But it's nothing to do with scholarship.
Thank
I hope I haven't upset anybody who's published a book on Amazon.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Roger. But I think, does it not then also bring in the question about that if Amazon publishes the way you send them something and they publish as form of a book and has all the numbers and people are then encouraged to buy it, or those who buy who read it and stuff. But is it any different than when people write blogs or sort of other forms of work, which is often not peer reviewed and is available for reading? So would that be any different to that?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it depends what kind of blog, of course. If it's a purely personal blog like my own one or my Substack, there's no filtering there whatsoever for anything at all. So you can more or less say what you like on any blog. But of course, publishers also use blogs, like the research outreach page that I showed you. That's essentially a WordPress blog, but of course that is filtered. It goes through an editorial, not a review process, but there is some filtering for the content and suggestions of how you can make it better. But no, I mean, I think that's and I love blogging. I think it's a great way to get stuff out, but it's a great way to get things out because there's no impediments to getting things out on it. It's just you write it, it goes up, Yeah.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Any other comments?
I don't know why I mentioned ChatGPT there. I think I must have meant to say something about it and completely forgot. And I think what I might have done was copied the ChatGPT slides into another presentation and cut them rather than copied them stupidly. But I was going to say it is relevant to the industry because I'm pretty sure that AI is being used and has been used. I'm a great fan of AI, but I'm sure it's being used by the predatory publishers just to automatically process things. I mean, if you pay a subscription to ChatGPT 4, it's unbelievable what it can do with what you send them, you know. But of course, there's a big concern ethically with people using ChatGPT and other AI platforms to produce academic papers now. And I think that was the angle I was going to get at there about publishing ethically, but unfortunately it wasn't there. So apologies for that.
I mean, what are your thoughts about it? Because I know that quite a lot of editors have got quite concerns, and then they get really, but then anything can be used ethically and anything can be used unethically.
Yeah, that's right.
And to me, it's a tool, and if you use it as a tool, it can be effective. And to be able to detect you can't identify if it's used or not used unless you know how it is used and how it is worked. So many of the academics and editors don't want to touch it because they think it's wrong and they've got very strong views about it. But then one of the, I think, consequences is that they would they would always be judging something, not exactly knowing what it does and how to actually screen it.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, of course, Elsevier and Wiley, and I'm sure other publishers too, but I'm familiar with what they've done. They ask you to declare your use of AI and what you've done with it. And that cannot be writing the article. It's got to be checking English or assisting with analysis, that kind of thing. But you're supposed to declare it. And publishers are very busy working on tools to detect AI. But of course, if you know anything about AI, and I'm not an expert by any means, it's clever. It's not intelligent. It's clever. It can just step away it can move ahead every time. If it learns what you're doing to detect it, that can be trained to avoid that. So it's not difficult to use. It's more often found by default. You know, I was marking an essay in another country. I won't mention the country, and recently from a master's student, and it's had in the midst of some very poor writing in a second language, as English is a second language, there was a beautiful section. And of course, that always alerts you to the possibility of plagiarism. But not only that, it said at the end of the paragraph, it said it was a description of qualitative research. You know, we would advise you we suggest you use the above paragraph, and that was pasted in at the bottom. You know, AI does that; it'll give you various alternatives, and you know. And so I said to her, you know, if you're going to use AI, read what you've put in, at least take out the comments that the AI puts in about the advice, you know, or you get things in journals with timestamps on them from the AI and all sorts of things. But yeah, it's got to be declared, and it can't be a co-author. That's been decided. I'm well aware of that one, having done it once for a laugh. But and also it shouldn't be cited as such. And there's a big debate going on in the Scholarly Kitchen. I don't know if those of you who are editors subscribe to the Scholarly Kitchen, but the last 2 days there's been a for and against actually citing it as a source. But I mean, I would veer to say no, because you don't cite Google as a source, and it's in many ways it's much the same. But it's a matter of declaring its use. I think that's the key thing.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any other comments, anyone? Okay, so if not, then thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much, Roger, for doing this talk. And I hope people find it useful, and it's recorded and available on YouTube, and I'm going to share this widely. And please share it with whoever finds it useful. It's a shame that, you know, quite a lot of people who are here, they already know about these topics, and we still find it interesting. So it's a shame that we don't have people who, like, you know, PhD students, early career researchers who will find these talks more useful. And I think we just need to find a way of disseminating that information as much as possible to them. And that's the reason we do it, to provide those sorts of learning opportunities and developmental opportunities for people, and to tell them that, you know, you can come to us if you need any advice and suggestions, and we are there to help. So please do disseminate if you can, and do let us know if there are any other topics that you would like to explore. And we are going to advertise our next webinars, which will be done by, I think, yours, Mark, or yours is in December, isn't it?
Is in December, yes,
So
exactly.
there is one before that. I think Sue is doing it. So I'll put the information out there for that particular webinar. Please do help disseminate that as well. Mary Louise?
Can I be so bashful? We're doing the PhD Virtual Connect of Sigma Europe. It's our 10th anniversary in November. And as Leslie will know, and yourself, Parveen, we do a masterclass in February, which obviously will be in 2025. I don't know, I'm not asking for a yes, but maybe Roger or Parveen will be interested to give this talk again, because obviously there will be PhD candidates. We had this last November 39 that attended the conference, so I'm confident, you know, that we've got enough, obviously, interest. So I'm just putting it out there. It's plenty of time.
Yeah. As long as I'm available, happy to do that.
Oh,
Yeah.
brilliant. Now we'll be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
I mean, I put a PDF into the chat, but I'll send them to you to disseminate as well if you want.
Yes, please. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Okay, if there's no other questions, and it's nearly 1 o'clock, thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and I hope you found this useful. Have a good afternoon or evening or wherever, or morning, wherever you are, and a good weekend ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to see people. I haven't seen for a while, Marco and people. Nice to see you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.